My life story is about dreams, choices, forgiveness, love, perseverance and passion, and the relationship between the environment and ordinary people like you and me. A message I received 29 years ago was, you're hearing impaired, you have progressive loss, make the best of your hearing aid systems for as long as you can and accept the reality. But what happened to me?
During 1977-78, he was part of the then Army operational activities in Angola Caprivi Strip. During a skirmish as a gunner of an armoured vehicle exposed to excessive gunfire, the end result being progressive hearing loss in both ears as a result of acoustical trauma.
At the beginning, I experienced severe hearing loss to eventual profound loss. In other words, hearing loss after acquiring a spoken language. That is known as post-lingual loss. People who are born deaf experience prelingual loss and use sign language and the written form of the spoken language as medium of communication. And they do not use their voice as I do. For 2 decades, my family and my friends had to go through the different and difficult stages of progressive loss with me, and the challenges never stopped. At that stage, I was a senior lecturer in electronics at a tertiary institution with wonderful opportunities ahead. But the prognosis was a type of a death sentence in terms of my communicative abilities with others. But I started my journey with the words of the well-known song of ABBA, I Have a Dream in My Mind.
I have a dream, a song to sing, to help me cope with anything. If you see the wonder of a fairy tale.
I took up the challenges of being hearing impaired under difficult circumstances. Despite all my efforts, I still lost my job as there was no legislation available regarding the reasonable accommodation for persons with disabilities in the workplace before 1994. But very important, I did not only lose my work, but my career as well. Even so, I was not prepared to give up on my dream. My new employer, Association for Persons with Physical Disabilities Free State, changed my job specification to accommodate my disability. I supported my studies at UNISA towards being an education practitioner and provided lip speaking and note-taking services in my working environment when necessary. How do I accept the reality that goes with hearing loss? The feeling of being cut off, the process of lip reading and to make the best of the hearing aid systems, the ongoing process of speech therapy, the night after night doing exercise after exercise in front of a mirror to be able to read lips. And one can only read 6 letters of the alphabet on the lips. To maintain myself as an employee, husband and father of 2 children. To be able to accept another person as a lip speaker interpreter in the communication process, as well as other people's reactions of this. Bringing in the 3rd person in the communication process. And how to cope with the lack of rehabilitation services for persons experiencing hearing loss. The lack of assistive listening devices. And the lack of daily assistive living devices. For me, it was a struggle with a person does not choose to be disabled. But why me? Why hearing loss? Why disability? The fight, the learn, the stand up again, just to have to fight again, to live with it daily. The inaccessibility of the community was an extremely traumatic experience for me. Many of those concerned only think of the physically disabled, the challenges of the mobility impaired, when matters of accessibility and rehabilitation are discussed. In this matter, the less visual disabilities challenges are unfortunately totally ignored. For example, the inaccessibility of conference centers, churches, classrooms, theaters, and evacuation procedures in buildings. The hard reality, I was out on many levels. At my work, in my family, in my church where I belong. I thus had to learn to look at life in another way. Small things that one took for granted suddenly became a nightmare. I, for example, could not hear a tap dripping and I could then forget to close it because my brain was not tuned in to do that. The message did not get there. When I drove my car, I could not communicate as usual, and I also could not hear the sirens of emergency vehicles. My ability to hear and enjoy nuances and surrounding sounds and noises affected me emotionally as well as physically. I could not follow people if they turned away while talking to me or if they put their hand in front of their mouth or chewing or smoking. It was impossible to successfully communicate within the family if there was background noise or if the lighting was incorrect or bad. I started avoiding communicating with others, and the challenges at social gatherings becoming a nightmare. How do you maintain yourself as a parent in the matter of disciplining your child if you cannot hear your child speak? To be honest, I never reached a deep acceptance of my disability that which people so wish to see, but rather the passion to try to live successfully with it, to see the hand of the Creator in my life in trauma, and to have the strength to grab every opportunity that comes my way and try to make use of it the best of my ability. To be honest, how can a person really learn to accept the inaccessibility of the physical surroundings and the inaccessible thoughts of people who you confront every hour of the day, who do not have the ability to communicate with you? The lack of rehabilitation services and legislation for those with hearing loss and the lack of knowledge by experts is still sometimes a nightmare for me and many like me. For example, I received advice for myself and my family to attend sign language classes. Yes, you heard correctly. To expect that someone who is experiencing hearing loss later in life to learn and accept a new language and culture, as well as to motivate his family to do so with him. This while you're going downhill emotionally. With whom must I talk in sign language in the hearing community where we live and work? It is almost like asking a Jewish family to take on the Greek language and culture. But the sad is, after 17 years of democracy in our country, that many people are sometimes still receiving this wrong advice. I think back with compassion to my experience of persons' reactions to my hearing loss, and of course, my own comical reactions.
Fanie was travelling in an APD FS bakkie on the way to Radio Oranje. Just outside Bloemspruit, the bakkie broke down. A crack in the distributor cap seemed to be the problem, they later found out. He was desperately trying to draw the attention of motorists without any success. Later, to Fanie's relief, an elderly couple stopped. He thought, being in the emergency he found himself in, to put a disability card on the table. While the old lady slowly wound down the window, Fanie pointed to the logo of the APDFS on the door of the bakkie and asked, "Danny Wim, I'm deaf and I desperately need help." The old lady very quickly wound up the window and shouted, "Go, my old man, the boy speaks. Go, please go." Well, there he stood, left behind in the dust, still without help. Fanie's disability was not visible, and these two elderly people had not had exposure to the profile of people with pre- and post-lingual hearing loss. So how could he blame the old lady for not being aware that deaf people can talk?
The shame is that the diversity of people with hearing loss, as explained earlier, after so many years of democracy in our country, remains ignored by certain role players. I kept on dreaming about that one day when it would be possible for me to be able to hear again the voices of my loved ones, music, surrounding sounds. Very interesting. Important to take note that due to the reactions of people, I began to feel guilty for dreaming and not accepting my circumstances. I continued my career and also became a member of the Council of UNISA, a presenter on Radio Sonder Grense and many community radio stations, as well as the patron of the South African Hearing Institute. But I still had my dream. But I was socially being excluded on various levels. I cannot explain to you how stressful this can be, depending on others for so many basic things in terms of communicating effectively. After a few years of being hearing impaired, I read a story of a lady's experience after she had given birth to a child with a disability. And if I think back, this became one of the changing points in my life. It is actually very fitting in everyone's lives today. For this mother, it was to plan a holiday in Italy.
To learn a bit of Italian, to dream of a boat ride in Venice, and to see the beautiful statue of David. Her suitcases were packed long before she was due to leave, and she was more than ready to go. What a trip, and what anticipation! When the plane landed, to her shock, she heard the air hostess announce, "Welcome to Holland." "I did not book to come here, sorry for you. I just don't want to be here at all," she shouted. Long afterwards, she hated the word Netherlands and wanted to wipe the country out of her mind even more. People wanted to know, "Have you ever been to Italy?" All she could say was, "That was where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do."
Many of us have probably, as this mother, had precious dream loss. But then the wonderful outcome of the story. One day, this mother realized that she's not in a place full of pests and plague, she's just in another place. It was as if the shades fell off her eyes and she became aware of the beauty of the tulips and the beauty of the Rembrandts in Holland. But although she loved Holland, she always yearned to see Italy. What a relief it is to be able to look around and to see and to replan and to be able to put new plans on the table, new dreams on the table. To be able to see what your goal is on this earth. Just find yourself in another place like this woman. 4 years ago, I met Tamara Turton, an audiologist from Johannesburg. She pinpointed the exact emotional state I found myself in. Over a period of time, she allowed me to grow through this difficult process until I was ready to consider a cochlear implant. In spite of the negative thought processes about research and cochlear implants and all the politics in this regard, I still had my dream. So much is done regarding research, and here I am today after a bilateral cochlear implant. Something I, for 29 years, never thought possible. It's very important to understand that an implant does not restore normal hearing. Not all people will have the same success and experience after an implant as I did. I can only speak for myself. It is my responsibility to put this experience in perspective. But the reality is, one does not deserve such a wonderful gift. I'm just accepting it with humbleness and gratitude. I'm still a person with an impairment, a hearing impairment. If I may compare, from a wheelbarrow to an electrical wheelchair. Instead, an implant can give a deaf or a hearing impaired person a useful representation of sounds in the environment and help him or her to understand speech better. 22 August 2011 was the day of my first implant. On this day, my life changed completely after so many years of waiting and dreaming. The 10 days between the implant operation and the switch on of the processor was very difficult to deal with physically as well as emotionally. And then the switch on. Kom maar.
Is hy sag?
So,
Hoe klink hy?
soos amper soos net aanhoudende lawaai.
Mooi, so jy het nie geskrik nie. Alright, hy is nou aan. En ek gaan
Amper soos 'n suis aan die frekwensies soos radio wat bietjie van stasie af is.
perfek. Funny, wow. Hoe klink hy? Is hy medium? Is hy sag?
Medium of sag, sê jy vra vir my. I could hear. My dream had come true. The voices of people, the ability to differentiate between different sound levels, and the ability to hear the surrounding sounds. My experience outside the hospital just after the switch on was a major challenge. The surrounding sounds was overwhelming and intimidating at times. It was possible to hear so many things. Some for the first time and others again after 29 years. The raindrops falling on the roof of the car, the jangle of the car keys, the car's engine, the tick of the indicator, and for the first time, the ringing tone of a cell phone. And my wife's voice reading SMSs of congratulations without me looking at her in the mirror while I was driving home. And back at home, the first thing I did, I listened to guess who? My favorite song of ABBA, I Have a Dream.
I have a dream, a song to sing, to help me cope with anything. If you see the wonder of a fairy tale, you can take the future, even if you fail. I believe in angels, something good in everything I see. I believe in angels, when I know the time is right for me, I'll cross the street. I have a dream.
I've learned over the past 29 years to allow myself to dream, no matter how impossible it might be. I've also learned that there are people like you that will support us, make our dreams come true. I've learned to forgive myself for all the mistakes that I've made. I've learned to forgive the army, my circumstances. I've learned that I'm not a tragic victim of circumstances. I'm not the one. I'm just one of thousands that found themselves in the same situation as I do. 16% of society is experiencing hearing loss more than 25 decibels. I've learned what it really means to deal with denial, frustration, anger, resentment, compromise, depression, and acceptance. I've also learned to deal with the question, why me? Why disability? In my opinion, the world is not perfect. Being disabled is part of life and a major challenge. Miracles are also a reality. It happens every day. My life story is a miracle. The success is if we can reach the point where you can ask, why not me? And if you can wait until time is right to cross the stream. If not on earth, surely never. It's so easy to forget about the impact of disability on the family members and the friends. Sometimes the focus is so strong on the poor victim. A poem written by one of my children explained this very clearly.
Dad, wish I could write you a poem without rhyme or pace, just one with my face, without alteration or personification, no metaphors, phonics or punctuation. Just one that shows you grace, because you too kneel to pray, despite that very day when silence was born from bombshells and scorn. Dad, I want you to look at my poem, a poem like you, without rhyme or pace, just one written with my face, one that also speaks above a crowd, yet still stays proud. Dad, I want you to see my poem through your two eyes and feel the teardrops when it cries, when those around us less aware whisper, "Ach, shame," while they stare. Dad, I want you to touch my poem, one without rhyme or pace, one just with my face, one that smiles and prays and waits for grace, for everyone around to see what deafness means to you and what deafness means to me.
And I thank God for all the wonderful lessons that I could learn. What a privilege.
Unfortunately, Fanie underwent a further sudden deterioration of the hearing in his left ear, which meant that he could no longer receive any benefit from amplification on that side. This had quite a dramatic effect on his ability to cope. The ideal was a cochlear implant on the left to lift his communication abilities to a level much higher with all the benefits from bilateral implants. One afternoon, Fanie went to his DVD player and listened carefully to the last part of his favorite song, I Have a Dream. I have a dream, a fantasy to help me through reality, and my destination makes it worth the while. Pushing through the darkness still another mile, I have a dream.
Reality and my destination makes it worth the while.
This is my story, a story about a person with a hearing disability in need for reasonable accommodation in an inaccessible environment. A story about dreams and choices, about love and forgiveness. A story about people like you and people like me. There are so many positive outcomes in my life story. My children are both involved in community development. My daughter studied theology. My son became a full-time sign language interpreter, and I'm not a sign language user. It was possible for me to become involved in the development of accredited training material regarding the impact of hearing loss. It was possible for me to play on a daily basis a role in sensitizing society about the content of disability issues. Actually, it became a new career and a wonderful opportunity. In conclusion, allow yourself to dream, no matter how impossible it might be. 1 Corinthians 13 refers to faith, hope, and love. Hope is to my dream. In my opinion, to dream is just as important as faith and love. An open-end question to you. What are your dreams for the future? I'm dreaming about quality rehabilitation services for all persons experiencing hearing loss. Do not underestimate your ability to make a difference in the life of persons with disabilities. If it was not for the Association for Persons with Disabilities Free State and its people, I would have landed on the ash heap of life. That is a true reality. I do not have words to convey my thanks to them. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my life story with you.
I have a dream, a song to sing, to help me cope with anything. If you see the wonder of a fairy tale, you can take the future